chug, 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 chug.
Welcome back to the Wizard Staff. I'm your host, Guy.
And I'm Blake.
And we are two drunk novices who like to talk about EDH. We drink and swear, so you've been warned. Please drink responsibly when you're talking about children's card games. And what a night to be talking about children's card games, because we are talking about Commander 2020.
I'm excited. We are doing two separate episodes, one for Commander 2020 precons, and another one is going to be about Ikoria. We're going to make them two separate episodes. I know a lot of people listening are kind of have them confused together in their minds, so hopefully this helps separate them.
Yep, and it's also cool to note that not only has it been less than 6 months, I think maybe it'll be 8 months, but it hasn't even been a full year since Commander 2019. We're getting these earlier,
yes, and
they are being lined up with the release of Ikoria. And so these are taking place on that plane. It's the first time that WotC's ever done that. They are also bringing back 5 decks instead of 4 that they've been doing for the last 3 years. And they're all wedge partners. Not wedge partners. They're all just wedge decks.
I'm still bad. I still don't know the difference between wedges and shards, but that's on me.
So a wedge, if you don't know from our MTG dictionary episode, but a wedge would have the color in the middle, and then it's 2 enemy colors on its left and right. So if you have green, then you have black on one side and blue on the other side. If you have red, then you have white and blue, Jeskai. So that's the easiest way. And so the 2 that are shared enemies of the center color are allies.
And then I think one last thing to note about this set in particular is that they really boosted the number of reprints in this product, and that's been a response to a lot of complaints during C18 and C19 about having so few reprints and having such a low quality cards in the sets. So I think we all agree that more reprints is a good thing.
I definitely agree. Before we get a little more into that, what are we drinking tonight?
Well, I went to the store, and there's kind of sparse options right now during the virus. So I was able to find Wanderlust India Pale Ale, and it's pretty enjoyable. It's from Portland, Oregon. It goes down real smooth. There's a very colorful wolf. How would you describe this style, Guy?
It's almost impressionistic and graphic in a way. It also looks like it was done with watercolor.
All right. What Guy said. Yes.
And then for me, I am drinking an old classic that we've had before on the podcast, Boddington's Pub Ale. At the grocery store I went to, it was pretty well stocked, but the alcohol that they have is pretty generic, so there wasn't anything special or fancy. It's just all kind of, Corona, Budweiser, Mix Ultra, just Angry Orchard, a lot of, common things. So I just grabbed what I knew I liked, and yeah, that's probably what I'll be drinking over the next few episodes that we do while we're in quarantine.
All right, sounds good. So to anyone who is new to us doing a review, Guy and I tend to do our reviews by, at least with Commander precons, we first talk about notable reprints, then we talk about the new legendary creatures, the new stuff that can be your commander. Then we talk about new cards that go in the 99, the notable ones. And then we wrap up the episode by giving our final thoughts about the product itself. So wait till the end to hear our big overall thoughts.
Yes, and something else important to note is since this is centered around Ikoria, and Ikoria being a new standard legal set, there are a few new mechanics that we will be bringing up and going a little into detail about, because especially for Commander, it can be quite confusing.
I hear Commander is a little bit confusing and complicated.
And they just decided to be like, fuck it, it's going to be even more complicated and confusing now, bitches.
Yeah. Alright, so we're going to start off with notable reprints, and what better to start off with Soul Ring. And something they always reprint. But we also got like Arcane Signet. That's nice. It's been like ever since Throne of Eldraine, pretty important staple. And like honestly, there's so many that like we don't have the time to go through all of them. Like we got like Silent Arbiter, Shared Animosity, Alessio Smiles at Death, Crop Rotation, like Rashmi Eternity's Crafter. We got a couple Planeswalkers like Jace Architect of Thought, like the Locust God, some like really occasionally some like pricey cards. So they really upped the reprints in this, and I am very happy.
Yeah, it definitely seems like they paid attention to what we were saying. They threw in like a semi-expensive card, like on the $15 to $20 range, at least one in every one of those sets. So for each deck, the reprint value is estimated to be, prior to recording this, at least above $80 for all the decks. And when the decks are at an MSRP of $40, I believe.
I think so.
That's a good value for your money.
All right. Do you want to talk about the new mechanics of this set? Just kind of briefly give people, just make sure everyone's up to speed. I know people have heard about these probably a lot. Just make sure everyone's up to speed.
Yes, I did try to become an expert on this. And so this is like your go-to guide for some of these new mechanics. So the first one that we're going to talk about is Mutate. And this is a new ability that allows you to cast creatures for an alternate cost. When you mutate, you are stacking a mutate creature onto an existing creature on the battlefield. And the key thing to note is that that creature that you are mutating onto cannot be human. So when you mutate, you choose whether the mutate card will go on top or on bottom. Now, whichever creature is on top determines the power and toughness, converted mana cost, and color identity. When you mutate onto a creature with pre-attached equipment and auras, the mutated creature will still have those cards. You will not re-trigger any enter the battlefield triggers when you mutate onto a creature. If you mutate onto a creature that has already been on the battlefield for more than a turn cycle, the new mutated creature does not have summoning sickness. When your mutated card has an ability that refers to the name of another creature, it is still referring to itself. So, for example, if you have Cloudpiercer and you mutate that onto Skithrix, Skithrix has an ability that you say, tap 1 black, Skithrix gains haste. Now that would only apply to Skithrix, but now that you have placed Cloudpiercer on top, Cloudpiercer is the card that you are referring to. And now Skithrix's ability, tap black, give Skithrix haste, now means give Cloudpiercer haste. When the top card dies, they all go to the graveyard. If you mutate into a creature and your opponent destroys the target you were going to mutate onto, you still get the creature you are mutating onto the field, but you do not get the mutate trigger. So, cast mutate, opponent lightning bolts, creature that was going to be mutated onto dies, creature that you are mutating with enters the battlefield, no triggers. Now finally, these are commander specific. Mutate does not get around the commander tax. It is an alternate casting cost, not an activated ability like Curator or Derevi. So if you are mutating from the command zone, you will always pay the additional 2. If your commander is included in the stack of cards that have mutated, that one creature stack will count towards your commander damage. That is Mutate.
That was a very valiant effort of trying to concisely explain this mechanic.
It is definitely one of the craziest mechanics they've done in a while.
Yeah.
And it's nice because now we're not going to be talking about the 2 craziest mechanics that they've done in a long time in 2 episodes. We're saving one for now and one for the next review.
Nice. So I guess I could talk about keyword counters real quick. While technically a new mechanic, I do not think that this is too hard to understand. Like, cards give counters to the creatures that grant those creatures an evergreen ability. For example, flying.
Yeah.
Trample.
It's just one of the new commanders does it, but it just says like, oh, give so-and-so a flying counter, and that just means that your creature now has flying.
And those will be available in like punch-out cards, I believe. Sort of like brick counters, so you will have that.
Yep. And then for this set too, we have the return of Partner With. And on Ikoria, this goes into a little of the lore, there are these people who are known as bonders, and these bonders have a close relationship with a specific monster. So it's kind of like an avatar when Navi will like bond with an animal, you know?
That's actually a pretty good example, yeah.
So they partner with each other, going forth into battle and supporting one another. So a quick reminder how partner with works. So if the partner's in the 99, not your deck, and you cast one, you can tutor for the other and put it into your hand. You can have them both as your commander, but they can only be partnered with each other as commanders. And commander attacks and commander damage are tracked separately for the two. And what's nice about returning with partner with is we're going to get 4 new legendaries per deck that are going to be in foil instead of the normal 3. And so in each of the decks we have 1 monocolor human of some variant, and then the partner is an ally pair. So there's like green, and then the partner pair I think is blue-black.
So remind me, like, the last time we saw partner with was Battle Bond?
Correct.
Okay, and was that the only time they did partner with?
Correct.
Okay, so this is like the first time we're seeing it again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But it makes sense because of this lore that they've set up where people bond with creatures.
Alright, so now that we've gotten everyone up to speed, Guy and I are now going to do a rundown of the legendary creatures, the cards that can be your new commander, and we're going to go deck by deck. We're going to start with the Jeskai deck called Timeless Wisdom, and this is like the cycling theme. This is piloted by Gavi, Nest Warden. It is 2 blue, red, white for legendary creature Human Shaman 2/5. You may pay 0 rather than pay the cycling cost of the first card you cycle each turn. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, create a 2/2 red and white dinosaur cat creature token. So this is a cycling deck. Cycling is very popular amongst casual EDH players, and up until now there's only actually been like Zur the Enchanter as the only cycling deck, and it is run because you can easily get out Astral Drift and Astral Slide off of the Zur trigger. There's currently about 141 cards with cycling within Jeskai colors, and the most notable of them is the Decree cycle. There's Decree of Annihilation, Decree of Justice, Decree of Silence, and then there's also some, how should I say, like half decent cycling cards like New Perspectives.
Cycling support cards.
Yeah, cycling support cards like New Perspectives and Drake Haven that are okay.
Yeah, so those are some of the better cycling cards, but being able to cycle a card for free every turn, I think, regardless of whether or not it has a secondary ability, is just good value. You can do it at instant speed, and you can just kind of like go through your deck. Like if you keep drawing like a cycling land, and you're like, this isn't quite what I wanted. And so on next opponent's turn, you can cycle that card away, draw a card. Not quite what I wanted. Next turn, cycle this away. All right, no. And then by the time it gets back to you, you've probably gone through like 3 or 4 cards, and you're able to like sculpt your hand to be what you want it to be for your turn.
Mm-hmm. Being able to do that at instant speed really helps too. And I will say, like, cheating mana cost, making your cycling cost 0, like, that really helps the archetype just even function. Competitively speaking, I have seen some CEDH brews of this commander, but it seems kind of like an Anji Falconwrath deck where you just run kind of these like bad cards to just tear through your library in order to get to the good cards and try to win. And then also of note, I just kind of want to talk about this idea before we talk about the rest of the cards. It's that like, don't just go out there and buy Stabilizer. Stabilizer says players can't play cycling costs. Don't be a douche. Like, if you're seriously like playing this card just against your friend who like bought this pre-con, like instead actually make your deck better and like don't just be an asshole.
Yeah, I confused that with Fluctuator, which is also kind of a funny story because a ton of people tried to buy that card out and it spiked up to $30, but it got a reprint in this set, and I think because of that, it actually became the most expensive reprint in this set.
Yeah, that's exactly why.
But it's not one that's like super noteworthy to talk about, since it's just related to this.
Yeah, it is just kind of a funny story where like everyone was like heard about Cycling Matters, so they just bought them out. So it's like $30, and then like literally 1 or 2 days later, they like say, "Oh, we're going to be reprinting it," and it's like it's slightly gone down, but it's still pretty expensive, and it's just like, oh my goodness, people, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, I expect prices to kind of just go back to kind of how they were because people are being assholes.
Maybe, I don't know.
All right, so next we have Akim, the Soaring Wind. 2, and then Jeskai, blue, red, white. Legendary creature, bird, dinosaur. So like a pterodactyl. Flying. Whenever you create 1 or more creature tokens for the first time each turn, create a bird creature token with flying. And then 3, Jeskai. Creature tokens you control gain double strike until end of turn. So, I think this is a very good support card for this deck, though I don't see it being the front runner just like straight out of the deck. So even if you create like 10 tokens at once, you still only get like 1 bird.
That's the huge downside. It's like it doesn't matter how many tokens you make, you just get 1.
Yeah, and I guess it does help too that Gavi herself is making tokens, and you can give those tokens double strike. But it's like okay.
Yeah, on its own, it's very casual. It's very slow. It's a go wide token deck. It's whatever. All right. So our next commander we have is Braylon, the Sky Shark Rider. She is 3 and a red for a human shaman 3/3, and she partners with Shabraz. Sorry. When you discard a card, put a +1/+1 counter on Braylon, and it deals 1 damage to each opponent. Then for red, tap target shark gains trample until end of turn. Then Shabraz, the Sky Shark, is 3 white blue, a shark bird 3/3 with flying, and partners with this other said card. When you draw a card, put a +1/+1 counter on Shabraz, you gain 1 life. And then for hybrid white blue, target human gains flying until end of turn. So basically these are a partner with, and one of them's a shark bird, and they really interact with each other. This is weird.
These seem to be better for the cycling deck since you get synergy from the discard and the drawing if both are out. At least better than the bird dinosaur we just talked about. Wheel effects, obviously, Windfall, Wheel of Fortune, blah blah blah. Duh. I would have liked to see Braylon be able to put his counters on Shabraz, though, just to make one bigger than the other. Just so like commander damage could be easier to reach with one of them instead of like splitting it up. But I guess like, I don't know, I don't think Voltron is going to be your win con here, but it would be nice to have like one big shark bird in the air.
I still think both of them are going to get very big if you build the deck right around them. Like, because like, for competitively speaking, like Braylon is like the focus, and it's kind of like a Glinthorn Buccaneer, and you can basically give her a curiosity effect and then try to use that to do a combo win on your cleanup step, sort of like Gitrog, where you try to win on your cleanup step. It's also kind of like similar to a Niv Mizzet Perun because of the curiosity combo, but it's in white. So it's a little bit weird, but it can do stuff. I think it can be pretty powerful.
I think it could definitely get there. I don't know. Strong casual deck for sure. Not like competitively viable.
I think even it might be able to deal with competitive people.
I don't think combat's necessarily the best. Well, if you're not focusing on the combat, then sure.
Yeah.
Alright, so next we're going to go into the Enhanced Evolution deck, which is Sultai, so black, green, blue. And this is the deck that focuses around Mutate. And remember all those fun things that I talked about with the Mutate? So here's where it matters most. So, Otrimi, the Ever Playful. 3 black, green, blue. Legendary creature, Nightmare Beast. 6 sticks. Mutate. So he has a mutate cost. So for 1 black, green, blue, you can mutate him. He has trample. And whenever this creature deals combat damage to a planar, return target creature card with mutate from your graveyard to your hand.
So, like, as the deck is currently, as the precon, it works pretty well because there's a bunch of mutate cards in it. In terms of the wider scope of EDH, it's a little bit underwhelming because the reanimate effect is restricted to mutate cards.
I think this is one that'll see a lot of support coming out of Ikoria, because Ikoria will have a lot more mutate cards, and at the time of recording this, we haven't seen all the cards being spoiled. So I'm sure that there will be better mutate cards, or at least more mutate cards that you could take from Ikoria and then slot them into this deck. It's just kind of hard to talk about a little in terms of like mutate as an ability for a commander deck, just because it's a new thing right now.
Yeah, well, overall, this commander really asks you to do a very linear strategy. It's pretty transparent. There's not like, oh, what do I do with this? You just play mutate. That's it. So, the next commander we have is Zexara. I should have practiced these names more. Zexara the Exemplary. It is 1 black, green, blue for a Nightmare Hydra. It's a 2/3 with Death Touch. And it taps for 2 mana of any one color. And it says whenever you cast a spell with X in its mana cost, create a 0/0 green Hydra creature token. Then put X +1/+1 counters on it.
So I'm glad that this doesn't have X in its mana cost.
Like all the other Hydras.
Yeah, that tends to be a huge downside for legendary Hydras. Just because then when you put 2 towards that X, it is then also having to factor in the commander tax. So this one, it's just always going to be what you want it to be with commander tax. It's also just good value for 2 for 1, since you're going to probably just be casting a bunch of X spells. And you don't even need to go that big with the X spells, because you're going to you're just going to be casting a bunch of X spells, and you'll get like a Hydra creature token, and then that many +1/+1 counters on it to whatever X is. And I mean, like, but doubling season will just create 2 of those with double the counters on it. Like, Unbound Flourishing, like, those will just go nuts. So, yeah, it's not like, I don't know. Most of the Hydra decks that I've seen are like Roshin Meanderer, but yeah, this one's interesting. I like it.
Yeah, like it's definitely different just because it doesn't have an X in its cost. And I don't know, like, you can definitely do stuff like make infinite mana if you have Freed from the Real or Hemin's Aura, just because any mana dork that makes 2 mana or more, and at least one of them is blue, you just make infinite mana. So that's cool. You still need an outlet. So we're kind of talking about all those X spells. Like, yeah, just dump all that mana into an X spell and win, probably. That usually does the trick.
Yeah, I mean, infinite mana, cast something for X, who cares what it is? Then you get like a giant XX Hydra.
An infinitely large, well, technically not infinite, but basically an infinitely large green Hydra token with it. It's just like the cherry on top.
Yep. Alright, so now we got the partners for this deck. Khazar, Ruthless Stalker, 3 green legendary creature, human warrior. 3/3, he partners with Yukima, Stalking Shadow. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. And then Yukima, Stalking Shadow, 1 blue-black, legendary creature, Whale Wolf.
Whale Wolf?
Yeah. 2/2, partners with Khazar. Yukima can't be blocked. When Yukima leaves the battlefield, it deals X damage to target player and you gain X life, where X is its power. Yeah, so Whale Wolf, that's probably the most interesting pairing that we've seen.
So far. It's pretty cute looking.
Yeah, I mean, I have the idea is just going to be pretty straightforward. Like, you cast one and then you cast the other, and then you just, like, you know, have this, like, one unblockable creature. But I think, Blake, you have a completely different idea.
Yeah, so on the other end of this, if you're just, like, from a competitive standpoint, this is a pretty cool food chain commander. Just because you can loop Yukima infinitely and drain all of your, deal like infinite damage and like gain infinite life basically. And there's also the combo of like Alurin plus Cavern Harpy, which has been known to exist. And it's in Sultai, so you can just kind of run very powerful cards in general. So, like, you don't have to run it competitively, like I just talked about. Like, you could put it in your casual Yuriko deck, because it's unblockable. You could do that too.
Yeah.
Like, so you can't really go wrong. Alright.
No, there's two ends of the spectrum.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of like the purpose of this podcast, is like we try to talk about like the entire format, both from very competitive to very casual. So next we're going to talk about the next deck. It's the Teamer deck, Arcane Maelstrom. It's all about instants, or at least this next commander is. We have Calamax, the Stormrise. It is 1 green, blue, red for an elemental dinosaur. Whenever you cast your first instance spell each turn, if Calamax the Stormrise is tapped, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. Whenever you copy an instant spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Calamax. So this really asks you to make a instant heavy deck. You can try to get advantage out of Calamax by tapping him, so you want to run stuff like Smuggler's Copter or Cryptolith Rite, or just maybe make him unblockable with something like Whisper Silk Cloak or Prowler's Helm. Really want him to tap, but we don't want him to be like killed by some chump blocker. So make him unblockable or tap him some other way. And then, in my opinion, this is like the best of the 5 commander decks, like the leader of the 5 commander decks. Because at the very worst, you can just run this card for like value. Like, at the very worst. And it kind of reminds me of Riku of 2 Reflections, but you don't need to invest the 2 additional mana into copying the spell, so that's even better in that very specific situation. And you are limited to instants, but like honestly, that's not much of a downside. Is this like competitively viable? People are brewing with it. I haven't really seen anything too amazing. Again, at the very worst, it's like still a great value card.
Yeah, I think this one has the most potential, especially just as a commander, from all the ones we're going to talk about, because unlike Otrimi, who is mutate specific, or even like Gavi, who is cycling specific, they are linear in the sense of like that's what you need to focus on.
But instance from the whole game, all like 25 plus years of it.
Yeah, and that's a ton. Like, it's kind of crazy. So it definitely has the most potential. And I mean, I think even on like, what was it? The Command Zone, obviously, the most popular Commander podcast. But they were like, oh yeah, just cast fork copies, and then you copy fork, and then you just fork a bunch, make Calamax infinitely like large, or like you just declare when you're gonna stop, and then you got like a giant Calamax and just a bunch of copy triggers. So
a very big Stegosaurus.
Yeah, I mean, will it be EDH viable? Who knows? I think that we'll just have to see, but I think just in general, strongest one of all the decks. Alright, so now we have Xyrus, the Writhing Storm, 2 green, blue, red, legendary creature, Snake Leviathan, has flying. Whenever an opponent draws a card, except the first one they draw in each of their draw steps, create a +1/+1 green snake creature token. Whenever Xyrus the Writhing Storm deals combat damage to a player, you and that player each draw that many cards. So this was Jumbo Commander's preview, and he suggested just a bunch of wheels and snake support, which was very interesting. My friend Jesse is actually brewing this deck, and he's trying to do it with no wheels, just kind of like as a meme, which is pretty cool.
He just has to be hipster.
Yeah. I think it draws a lot of similarities to like what the Locust God wants to do, but that just seems stronger in my opinion. And so what I think is like you could have like a really competitive Locust build God deck, and if you wanted to like try and like take that down a notch and have it be more casual, you could just, you know, add green in, have Xyrus, and then, you know, snakes.
I will just say that a lot of people are excited about this card because, like, honestly, like, I wasn't that impressed when I first looked at it, but after looking at it, like, yeah, this can be a pretty good, like, mid-tier deck because you can run all these wheels, you have green for, like, overrun effects for all these snake tokens you're making, you have blue to, like, draw you all these cards, you also have red to draw you cards and like maybe even sack some creatures like Goblin Bombardment and Perforos. Just really get in the damage. Just everything this, all three of the colors really support what this commander wants to be doing. And also it's like a Leviathan, so like it reminds me a lot of like that one season of Yu-Gi-Oh where the main antagonist just like transforms into a Leviathan and threatens to destroy the world. So that's what I thought.
Got the Seal of Orichalcos.
Yeah, God, if we got a Seal of Orichalcos magic card, I'd just die.
And then Yugi literally tries to kill someone.
Oh yeah.
In one of those episodes.
Yeah.
On a train.
Yeah. So, by the way, this is just like, remember that card Akeem that we just mentioned? It makes yeah, we've already forgotten about him because literally this is just strictly better, basically.
Who's Akeem?
Yeah. So,
did we mention him this episode?
Yeah, we already have. Yes, guy. We did that on purpose. We're smart. Okay, so this next is a commander pairing. We have Haldak, Avid Arcanists. For 2 and a blue, we have a human wizard 1/4. You may play non-creature cards from exile with fetch counters on them if you exiled them, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells. What are fetch counters? Well, we have Paco, Arcane Retriever.
I've heard of fetch lands, but I haven't heard of fetch counter.
Get out of here. It is 3 and a red and a green for an Elemental Hound, 3/3, and it has haste. Whenever Paco attacks, exile the top card of each player's library and put a fetch counter on each of them. Put a +1/+1 counter on Paco for each non-creature card exiled this way.
Is this what they meant when they said reprint fetches into Commander 2020?
Oh my gosh.
But this isn't what we wanted.
This isn't quite what we wanted.
Nicely done. I do like how there's kind of like this good human pair with his dog, and then there's like this bad human pair with his dog. Or at least, I don't know if the Yukima and Kazir are evil. Yeah. But they're at least like, they look mean. It's interesting. I do like also how Paco doesn't need to like hit someone. He just needs to attack.
Yeah, that really does help.
So it's kind of like a Tali, you know? Mm-hmm. Except instead of like having to be in the moment, you can do this at a different time when you are actually able to cast some of those cards.
Yeah, and I was going to say that this is pretty much an Atali Primal Storm deck, but instead of being limited to red, you now can run Teamer colors. And Atali Primal Storm is in the 99 of this precon. So, pretty cool. Paco is a very good boy. Good doggo.
Good boy.
Yeah.
Alright, Symbiotic Swarm. It's Obzon. And this is the deck that focuses around those keyword counters that we mentioned.
Mm.
So the face commander is Cathril, Aspect Warper, 2 white, black, green. Legendary creature, Nightmare Insect, 3/3. When Cathril enters the battlefield, put a flying counter on any creature if a creature in your graveyard has flying. Repeat this process for First Strike, Double Strike, Death Touch, Hexproof, Indestructible, Lifelink, Menace, Reach, Trample, and Vigilance. Then put a +1/+1 counter on Cathril for each counter put on a creature this way.
Okay, I want to talk about this card. Okay. So,
No one's stopping you.
okay, so this is very similar to cards like Majestic Miriarch, Cairn Wanderer, Soul Flayer, Rayami, First of the Fallen, and
Who?
and Audric, Lunarch Marshal. So this sort of like giving abilities is better than this selfish gaining abilities. Some of these cards are selfishly gaining the abilities only for themselves, and some of these cards are selflessly giving to their entire board, their other creatures on the board. So there have been a number of these throughout the years, and Audric gives the abilities, and that's why it's the only playable one. And so, because Cathrid also gives, it might actually be played. I'm just kind of tired of seeing these cards and like, oh, I'm just going to selfishly accrue all this stuff for myself, and it's just unplayable in EDH. It sucks. I'm tired of seeing them. So to see them print a card that gives keyword abilities to other things, I'm just like, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It just is like a personal pet peeve of mine.
So I like how you're like, oh, let's give. But my idea was completely opposite, where I'm like, dredge, put in the dredge.
You can do that.
Mill yourself.
You can do that too, but just like,
Make
help out
Cathril
your
super
fellow
big.
creatures, man. Just like, goddamn.
No. Because if you dredge, and then you just put a bunch of creatures into the graveyard, and then you cast Cathril. Cathril is just going to be able to get a bunch of these counters. You put them on Cathril, and then make it like Voltron-ish.
Yeah.
Voltron-esque.
And unless you milled something with hexproof, I just like spot removal it, and like all that effort's fucking gone. Trash.
I know it's kind of like an eggs in one basket, but like just run almost every single creature to have hexproof.
This is a different discussion. As someone who plays Voltron for the last 4 years consistently, that's not gonna be happening much in Absent. Anyway,
is this the one that will kill Sigarda?
I will murder
Probably.
your face. Don't you dare. Alright.
Next deck.
Alright. We have
Next commander, sorry.
We have Tyam, Luminous Enigma. It is 1 white, black, green for a Nightmare Beast. Each other creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional vigilance counter on it, and then as an activated ability of 3, remove 3 counters from among creatures you control, put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard, then return a permanent card with CMC 3 or less from your graveyard to the field. So, this has me very excited, because it just screams like it's asking to be like a combo card. And worst case scenario, this is just amazing at recurring like any small value creature you have, like especially like Hate Bears. This really reminds me of like Curator, Ghost Chieftain, Reanimator decks.
Just a quick question, rules clarification. I don't know if you'll be able to answer it, but the way that it reads, each other creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional vigilance counter on it. Is that saying it's entering the battlefield with 2 vigilance counters on it, or is that just saying that it enters with a vigilance counter on it? Because I don't know why they would have to throw in additional.
That is an interesting point you bring up. Yeah, with an additional vigilance counter on it. I guess if you've already earlier given it a vigilance counter, it gets another one just so you can like use its activated ability.
No, when because the creature has to enter the battlefield, so it's like creature enters the battlefield. Does it get a vigilance counter, and then it gets another one?
No,
or is
I
it just
think
getting
I
one?
think it does need an additional vigilance counter, but I feel like that can be worked around.
Yeah, and so that just brings me to the point of like creatures can have multiple of these counters.
And
It's just like,
and to clarify, for the activated ability, it doesn't have to be a vigilance counter. It can be any counter.
yeah. So if you do have multiple vigilance counters on here, it's just, it's still just vigilance. It's not like double vigilance. I don't know what that would even do.
Super vigilant. I just think that this can possibly be a very strong card, and again, at worst, it's very good value.
All right. Next partner pair, Nikara, Player Scavenger, 2 and a black, legendary creature, human cleric. 2/2, partner with Yannick, has menace. Whenever another creature you control leaves the battlefield, if it had one or more counters on it, you draw a card and lose 1 life. Yannick, Scavenging Sentinel, 2 green-white, legendary creature, hyena beast, 3/3. Partner with Nikira, has vigilance. When Yannick enters the battlefield, exile another creature you control until Yannick leaves the battlefield. When you do, distribute X +1/+1 counters among any number of target creatures, where X is the exiled creature's power. So Yannick kind of seems strong on its own. Nikara just feels like a weaker any black draw commander out there. So you can still run the 2 as the pair, but then you just have like Erebos, or not Grizzlebrand, the nerfed one, or like Yawgmoth, and those just already do better black draw. You can still have them as the pair and have access to black, so you can run it. But yeah, I didn't think this was like super strong in my opinion.
Yeah, so far of all the partner with cards, so far, like it's definitely the weakest. I guess casually you can do an Abzan counter +1/+1 counter deck. I don't know. Like competitively, I don't know. Like I think people are still brewing with it. They've talked about stacks. They've talked about birthing pod. They've talked about food chain. No one's really been able to like crack it. So for now, I'm just leaving this on the back burner. I'm just like, if something happens, cool. If nothing happens with this, it's like, I'm fine with that too.
Yeah, so let's just move on.
Yeah. So we have our Mardu deck. This is the deck that cares about human tribal.
Ruthless Regime.
Yes. And so who's leading this? It is... I really should practice these names.
Jorina Kudrow.
Thank you. It is 1 and a red, white, black, human soldier 3/3. When it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 human soldier creature token for each time you've cast a commander from the command zone this game. Other humans you control get +2/+0. So it's like an aggro human tribal deck. Unfortunately, human tribal is like not popular at all in EDH. Even though there's like over 1,500 of them in Mardu Color Identity.
Yeah, I think this, similar to the Mutate deck, I think humans are going to get a lot of support from the Ikoria set that's coming out. So this is one that you could probably buy and then, go through like the colors and then throw it in there, make it a little better. But prior to this, it's not like this was even all that good, and can't run green, so no Hermit Druid, sorry.
Yeah, because that's what I was gonna go to, where it's like there's so many humans, you would think like we would have like some kind of human tribal matters deck in EDH, but we don't, just because it's not like they're elves, or it's not like they're slivers. They're just not synergistic enough to like make a cohesive deck. Maybe this deck will try to foster that, but I don't think it's going to be enough. Like up until now, the only like human tribal deck that we've had is Sigarda Heron's Grace, but it doesn't have green, or this deck doesn't have green, so you can't run Hermit Druid combo with Destiny Spinner Protection. And then you're also not Morophon the Boundless, but Morophon can just do anything, so whatever.
Alright, so next we have Kelsian the Plague. Red, white, black, legendary creature, human assassin. Has vigilance and haste. Kelsian gets +1/+1 for each experience counter you have. Return of the experience counters. And then you can tap Kelsian, deal 1 damage to target creature you control. When that creature dies this turn, you get an experience counter. So you're going to make Kelsey really big. So you probably swing in it for 2, and then since it has vigilance, you can then tap it, so you can deal additional damage and then hopefully kill something. Torbrand is just going to become everyone's best friend in any red deck, because I don't know, he's like...
It helps scale to EDH.
Yes. So, I mean, once you have it, you could deal a total of 7 damage, because first time you're doing 1 plus 2, and then you're doing, you're doing 2 plus 2, and then you're doing 1 plus 2, so that's 7 total, which is likely to kill something.
Yeah, that's kind of like best case scenario, though. It's like... Okay, so this is a Pinger's deck, and so what's the best thing you can do with that? You can give your Pingers Death Touch. Alright, so now your Pingers have Death Touch, and they can control, like, your opponents of never having creatures. It's not even in, like... Even with Torbrand, it's kind of still mediocre in my mind. Like, and it's not even like you're in blue or green, where you can do some untap, tap, dirtily things to start creating the amount of damage necessary for a multiplayer 40 life format. It's just, you're just not gonna get there. It's like one of the weak experience counter commanders like Daxos and Kalimnia. Like, you're just not gonna get there. I've kind of already forgotten about this deck.
Yeah, move on.
Yeah, so we have another partner with pair. We have Trin, Champion of Freedom, 3 and a white, Human Soldier 3/3, partner with Sylvar. At the beginning of your end step, if you attacked this turn, create a 1/1 white Human Soldier creature token. And then we have Sylvar, Devourer of the Free, 3 black and a red for a cat nightmare, 4/2 with Menace. And it says sacrifice a human, put a +1/+1 counter on Sylvar. It gains indestructible until end of turn. So I've also pretty much already forgotten about this pair, because they really don't do anything meaningful.
Yeah, I do. The one thing I will have to say that I think as a noticing trend among all these partners is, so you have your face commander, who obviously, you want that to be probably the commander you want to run outside of the deck. But all these partners seem to be at least pretty good synergy with any of the other decks. So the one that's a legendary creature that can't be partnered with, that's also in the decks, that's kind of like added bonus, like goodness. But these partners, I feel like, at least can be somewhat playable. Maybe not like the strongest option, but they can be somewhat playable out of the deck. Because this one cares about humans, and this is a human tribal deck, so it's going to do fine. It's not going to be the strongest if you want to like try and make this super strong.
Yeah.
But at least it's not like some random garbage. Kind of like in past commander decks, I feel like some of them have been, where it's just like, here's your face commander, and then here's 2 that like are in the color identity but don't really matter.
Yeah, I that's a good point. Like, I am starting to get into the weeds, where I'm only seeing it within the wider spec context of the format. But you're absolutely right. Within the context of this deck, where humans are important, yes, this works. But in terms of being on its own, I don't think it's good, because even if it just... where's the issue in this? It says sacrifice a human, and in the wider spec context of EDH, that's just too restrictive. If it said sacrifice a sacrifice a creature, or even if it said sacrifice a non-token creature, instantaneously this would like actually be decent. This would be playable. But the fact that it is restricted to sacrificing only a human, yeah, that just hurts. It's just an unplayable like Falconwrath aristocrat, basically. So we have completed talking about all of the legendary creatures. Thank you for sticking with us. we are now going to talk about all of the cards that are new that could be in the 99, the main deck. And then we will talk about our overall thoughts on the Commander 20 product.
But first, a word from our sponsors. So, cards for the 99. So, the first thing that we're going to talk about, and this is great because I feel like it's the first time that it's been relevant in a while.
In a long time.
Is every time that they have a Commander product, they do a cycle of monocolored cards that care about your Commander. So I don't even know what the one was in Commander 19. In Commander 2018, they had the Commander Storm.
That was awful.
Which cared about... I remember us talking about that and it being like, yeah, I think we could like work around this.
No.
But like, no.
I think the red one was like the only good one.
I don't even remember. But this time we get a cycle of instants that say cast this card for free if you control a commander. And what's also great about that is if you control a commander. So you don't even need to be controlling your commander for this. So the 5 are, so in Wuberg order, Flawless Maneuver. Creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. Fierce Guardianship. Counter target non-creature spell.
Ooh.
Deadly Trick. Exile target creature. Deflecting Swat. You may choose new targets for spell or ability. Obscuring Haze. Prevent all damage that would be dealt this turn by creatures your opponents control. Wow, 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 wow.
Wow.
So this is, I feel like, the first time that they've nailed it on a good commander cycle of monocolored cards. I'm going to be a little salty and just say, like, I'm upset that the white one says creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. Well, yeah, okay. But in my mono white Avacyn deck, like, they already gain indestructible when I'm controlling my commander. So it's like, whatever. So I almost feel like I should have gotten, like, a free Swords to Plowshare in this instance.
How dare WotC not print a card with you specifically in mind, guy?
How dare they?
That's rude.
But no, it's black. It's the free Swords to Plowshare. So yeah, I think all these are great.
All of them?
Obviously the blue and the black. I think all of them are good. I think the blue and the black one though are definitely the standouts.
I was gonna say the green one sucks, but all of the rest of them are good, actually.
I think the green one definitely can have a place in like any creature heavy deck. Like, I think it definitely has a home in some places. It's just not the one that I think we'll see much play in competitive play, at least.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway. Yeah, but...
And the one other thing I want to say, and I had this beef with you the other night, but I'm upset that they restrict putting one of these in each of the decks, where each deck could get the ones that its color identity are associated with. So like the teamer could have the green one, the red one, and the blue one. But in this case it only gets the red one. So I think that just hurts more so for the player base, because there's going to be less printings of all these cards. And again, I think a lot of these are still playable. And so you could throw these almost into any of these decks and it would be like relevant.
Yeah, because it's... Yeah. Like, these are... I honestly think like all of them except for the green one are going to see like a whole bunch of play. And so it's going to be very, very expensive money to buy these cards. So it would have been nice to have like, 3 reprints per deck, but we've only got 1 of these in each deck. So these are going to be like probably the most expensive cards in the set, just because they're almost like staples basically.
Yeah, I mean, free negate.
It's kind of tough. Like from WotC's perspective, it's like, all right, you build a terrible cycle like Commander Storm in C18. All the players complain about it and hate it. Like, print good cards, and so they're like, okay, here's 20 Commander 20. All the Commander cycle is good. It's like, all right, we're happy. Like, wow, some of us hate them because they're so good, and then some of us love them because they're so good, but they're going to be super expensive. It's kind of like a lose-lose situation, to be honest.
Yeah, pick these up sooner than later.
Yeah.
Because
I don't know when the next time they're going to reprint them.
probably not for a while, if ever. And then there's that other cycle that doesn't matter. The impetus cycle.
Yeah, I was going to call it the goad cycle, but impetus is probably the right name for it. But, like, yeah, it just has goad, and yeah, it's fine for filling up slots for the precons, but, like, outside of that, they're immediately being tossed. It's like, all right, cool, I have this new deck. I want to upgrade it. Yeet! Get out of here. So we're not even going to spend much time talking about those. Goat is cool, casually, but like, and like, it shows up in a whole bunch of Commander product, but like, it pretty much immediately is like, nope, as soon as you start taking yourself seriously, okay, it goes away. Alrighty. So we're going to now talk about cards in Wooburg order. So we're going to start with white. And I'm going to read both, I'm going to read two cards like back to back. And we're going to start off with Verger Rangers. It is 2 and a white for a creature human scout, 3/3 with first strike. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. As long as an opponent controls more lands than you, you may play lands from the top of your library. And then we also have Cartographer's Hawk. It is 1 and a white for a bird 2/1 with flying, obviously. And when it deals combat damage to a player who controls more lands than you, return it to its owner's hand. If you do, you may search your library for a Plains card, put it into the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. So...
White ramp!
Woo! Yes, alright. So, white, like, up until now, this is how white ramps. It's like Boreas Chargers, Gift of Estates, Knight of the White Orchid, Land Tax, Tithe, and Weathered Wayfarer. If your opponent has more lands than you, you basically get a land, basically is the idea.
I think these cards are going to be great for casual play. Because in competitive play, I don't feel like you're just going to be running mono-white decks. And since the only mono-white competitive deck that's viable is Tashar, and I don't think Tashar needs help.
Yeah, I'd argue Heliod makes the cut, but yeah.
Oh, Heliod too, sure.
Yeah.
He's more relevant, or more recent, so that's why. Kind of slipped my mind. Yeah. But it's good because these are just... Yeah, people have been asking for this. It's interesting design space, and I hope that they do more of it. What would you rather run, Blake? The bird or the ranger?
So that's a good question. It really depends. For the bird, you definitely want to play it in more aggro decks, and with the ranger, you definitely want it to be in more like control-y defensive decks where you just put down the ranger and it just kind of stays there and you use it for its static ability. And then honestly, like, there's certain decks that will want to run both because it's white ramp, especially like mono white decks. These are both great cards. I expect to play against them.
Yeah, so the next card is Dismantling Wave. And just hold on, just a note, but we only talked about Cartographer's Hawk and Verge Rangers together because they kind of
do the same thing.
It's not like they partner with each other, so don't worry about that.
And then also before I leave, I do want to say that this whole ability of you may look at the top card of your library is definitely a design space that WotC's been exploring over the last 3 years, and it's now in every single color and in colorless. And now that this white card's been printed, it's now in every color and colorless. So that's pretty cool, I think, just from a design perspective.
And I think Mark Rosewater, he did write kind of an article or statement saying that Verge Rangers is just a worse Courser of Kruphix. And I mean, Courser of Kruphix is a good card. So if Verge Rangers is like one step down. It's still like somewhat playable.
Yeah.
Because it kind of gives you like an 8th card in your hand and is somewhat card advantage, even though it's strictly situational.
Yeah, like he's basically said that like they are secondary in the effect that they are doing. So yeah, green's gonna do it better because it's primary in green and secondary in white. So I think people just complain too much.
And okay, so next card, Dismantling Wave. 2 white sorcery. For each opponent, destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment that player controls. Then you have Cycling. 6 white. When you cycle Dismantling Wave, destroy all artifacts and enchantments. So that went from 0 to 100 real quick. This is definitely made for the cycling deck, and it's definitely a good card in the cycling deck. I don't think it's terrible overall, but in white, you already have cards like Austere Command, Cleansing Nova, Chroma's Vengeance that destroy all artifacts and enchantments. I guess those are cheaper, but Dismantling Wave will draw you 1 card. I don't think, though, that the mana cost kind of like outweighs that, so it's just like,
Yeah, this is kind of how I view it. It's like if you're specifically playing a like slower deck that relies on 3-for-1ing your opponents constantly, like it's a super slow deck, then this is fine. But I would really encourage you to like maybe look at your deck and like tune it if you can, increase the amount of draw you have, and just start running a lot more 1-for-1 removal with a ton of card draw at like instant speed, because that's usually how you keep yourself from not dying. I'd rather run a lot of instant speed 1-for-1 removal than play sorcery speed 3-for-1s.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now we're gonna move on to blue.
We have Tidal Barracuda. It is 3 and a blue, fish, 3/4. Any player may cast spells as though they had flash. Your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. This is pretty good.
Yeah, it's Leyline of Anticipation, Vidalcan Ori for everyone, but you also get the additional effect of Grand Abolisher. Not bad. I mean, those are 2 very good cards, stapled onto 1, so... Plus, this costs the same amount as Leyline of Anticipation.
Yeah, and Vidalcan Ori. They're both 4 CMC.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just... From my perspective, it's like... If you really want to, like, just slam this down on your turn and then immediately win, because I don't really want to slam this down and then pass the turn and then have my opponents, like, doing stuff at instant speed. But like this card is just designed so well. Like the upside is so good, but the downside is so real too. It's like, this is great.
Yeah. We'll see about this. Next is Eon Frolicker, 2 blue creature elemental otter, 5/5 with flying. Question mark.
A 4-mana 5/5 flyer? That's weird.
And so when Eon Frolicker enters the battlefield, if you cast it, target opponent takes an extra turn after this one. Until your next turn, you and planeswalkers you control gain protection from that player. It's a cute otter, but like, how dare you give my opponents like an extra turn? I don't know if this downside outweighs getting protection from that opponent. Like, you're giving an opponent an extra turn. I can't emphasize that part enough. And like, unless if you're the one, you're playing this and it's like, okay, who do I choose? Okay, I'm gonna choose my friend Jesse over here. Oh, now Fabian and Hector they're like, well, why didn't I get an extra turn? And now they're just gonna beat up on me. Jesse gets 2 extra turns to do whatever he wants, so like he'll just do whatever he wants. He won't probably care about me, but now I have 2 people coming after me. I don't know. It's just, it feels so political. Because you have to be like, oh, friend who I just gave an extra turn to, please help
me.
Protect me.
Yeah. God, yeah. Like, I think this is a great in the deck, but like, I immediately, like, it's not actually that good in EDH in the grand scheme of things. Because, like, okay, think about it like this. There was a card called True Name Nemesis that came out in Commander 2013. It absolutely sucks in Commander, but it's like super relevant in other formats. It's actually really good in other 1v1 formats. But
Any 1v1 format.
yeah. But the problem is, like, okay, you gain protection from 1 player, but so what? You still have to do with 2 other opponents. Like, it doesn't do enough. It doesn't make the cut. And so the fact that this is a weaker True Name Nemesis, like, no. You do not want to play this in Commander at all. Don't even think about it. Don't listen to Guy. Don't even run it at all. It is a cute otter, but it will betray you. You will die.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's... I just thought it was like a relevant card to talk about because otters feel like they're becoming relevant in this set, and
Yeah.
I don't know. It's cute. It does something different.
Yeah, quick side tangent. This card was spoiled. I think this card was spoiled by the Woodland Park Zoo.
Yes,
And
that is correct.
Like, I actually have like a annual membership there, but I can't go there because virus is happening. So I'm just so sad. But it was a really cool collaboration. Like a card game and like a zoo. What is this? So maybe this isn't the darkest timeline.
What is this, a crossover?
Maybe this
episode?
isn't the darkest timeline. So maybe there is good in the world. All right. So yeah, we are on to our last blue card. This is Crystalline Resonance. It is 2 and a blue for an enchantment. Whenever you cycle a card, you may have Crystalline Resonance become a copy of another target permanent until your next turn, except it has this ability. So the reason I mentioned this card is because cycling is going to be very important, not only in the Jeskai Commander Precon, but also the Ikoria. So I know a bunch of people are going to like buy Ikoria and be like, wait, where's my Crystalline Resonance? And it's like, oh crap, it's gonna be in that fucking Jeskai Commander deck. God damn it, I have to buy that as a single now. So I just wanted to like talk about that because like it's up until now it's been very confusing, like which card is in the Commander 2020, which card's in Ikoria. I just wanted to clarify this is going to be in the Commander product. And then
the thing about that, if you're having confusion, look at the set symbols. Ikoria has like this eye, and then Commander has like the shield with the claw that's like trying to grab.
Is that what it's supposed to be? I've been so confused about what the Commander 20 symbol is.
I'm pretty sure that's what it's supposed to be.
Okay.
I mean, it's not super clear.
Okay.
But this is a good card. Like,
yeah.
I think this is a good card for cycling.
Yes.
And I do kind of feel bad now because I feel like all the new cards that we're talking about revolve around cycling, but not a lot of them. All the other new cards are just kind of like that we're talking about are either not related to any of the decks because they're just like whatever. There's better options, or like they're just generic and like okay. So this card is good for cycling specific. That's just what I want to say. And
yeah, like it is. I agree with you. It does go in a very specific number of decks, those being cycling. But with this set and Ikoria, like it's definitely going to be in the forefront of the Commander zeitgeist. And as I've mentioned earlier, like casual EDH players just love cycling. So I think this is just going to blow up and be super popular. Like and especially like cycling is, it's called deciduous. It is not evergreen, but it's like pretty close.
The fun fact I know about cycling is it is the first mechanic that was designed and then came back as a returning mechanic. So they designed it for one set, and then a few sets later they're like, Alright, we want something that's gonna be good like cycling. So what should we do? And they thought about it and they were like, why not just cycling?
Why not just cycling? Why not keep it
So they brought it back.
keep it simple, stupid? Yeah.
And so cycling almost feels like it returns every other year, because came back in Dominaria, and then year without it, and it came back in Amonkhet. So
All right, we have made it to black. We only have 2 black cards to talk about. So we have Dredge the Mire. It is 3 and a black for sorcery.
Dredge.
It doesn't have Dredge, but it's Dredge in the name. Each opponent chooses
Yeah,
a
I'm
creature
sad.
card in their graveyard. Put those cards onto the battlefield under your control.
I want a new Dredge card in black or green, but it's never gonna happen.
Dredge is like... I don't know where it is on the storm scale, but I'm pretty sure it's like not going to be
It's a
reprinted.
10.
It's at 10? Jesus.
It's a 10, and the only way it won't return in any standard legal set. There was one card in Modern Horizons that had Dredge, but it was a red card. So,
Oh yeah, Red Dredge. We all know about that.
so it's the only red Dredge card. But yeah, 4 mana and you get 3 creatures, so that's like not bad value. I'm just upset that it doesn't have Dredge on it. But
it has Dredge in the
'Cause I
name.
thought-
It should have Dredge in the mechanic.
I mean, I read it and I read it wrong, and I thought like it was much better than it was, because I was like, oh wow, we each get a creature from our graveyard onto my battlefield, and so I thought like I was also getting a creature to put onto my battlefield. And so, like, my opponents would probably pick the suckiest stuff, and then I would get 1 card. But then you would also want, like, Dredge on this card, because then you would just be wanting to fill up your graveyard a bunch. But it's not even like you get a card from your graveyard. So your opponents are just giving you cards.
Yeah. Basically, it's a reanimate spell, but it's terrible because your opponents get to choose what you get, and then it's not even from your own graveyard, it's from your opponent's graveyard, meaning the creature you get probably doesn't synergize with your deck, and it's probably just some dumb value card. And yeah, you're gonna get lucky sometimes in some real casual pods, like, oh my god, I got this Eldrazi, oh my god. Like, that's like the only creature they had, but just like, that's just so unlikely. Like, most of the time, this is just gonna be so painfully mediocre. Do not run this. Please do not run this as a reanimate spell. There's even better budget options. Anyway.
Species Specialist. 2 black creature human warrior. 2/3. As species and specialist enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Whenever a creature of the chosen type dies, you may draw a card. I don't know why, but I feel like not enough people are talking about this card. It just seems like it's going to be really good in aristocrat like sack loops, because then you'll just be drawing a bunch of cards off the cards that you're just going to be sacking. And, like, am I crazy, or like has anybody else been talking about this?
No, people talk about it, but I definitely agree with you, Guy, where like I feel like people like card is not OP, but like it's better than people think. Like, the restriction of having to choose a creature type really is not that much of a restriction. If you think about it, because like especially certain commanders will really make use of a certain type of token. Think of Teysa Karlov, everybody loves her. Think of Gave, think of Prosh. All of these commanders are making a specific type of token, so you can just guarantee that you're going to get the draw off of Species Specialist. And then there's also cards in the 99 which make a very specific type of token that can also be used in sack loops. Think of Requiem Angel, making 1/1 white creature spirit tokens with flying. Think of Open the Gates and Xanthrid Necromancer, making 2/2 black zombies. Like, you're, again, name that certain type of creature, and you're good to go. Like, the restriction on this of having to choose a creature actually isn't that bad. I feel like people are a little bit harsh on this. Aristocrat's got a lot of support. Okay.
I kind of just brushed over this card until I was just going through the Commander 2020 stuff, and I was like, wait a second, this is just like gonna be good in any like tribal deck too, if you're running black at least.
Yeah. At the very worst, it's like value. Like, oh, you die, all right. I at least am maintaining card advantage. Yeah, at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Next is Molten Echoes.
We are now in red.
Yep. 2 red enchantment. As Molten Echoes enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Oh, whoa, where did we see that before? Whenever a non-token creature of the chosen type enters the battlefield under your control, create a token that's a copy of that creature. That token gains haste. Exile it at the beginning of the next end step. Yeah, this is good in Anala and Goblin Tribal. Just because like a lot of goblins will enter the battlefield, and those goblins will create tokens. And even though those tokens won't create tokens, but your initial goblin will create tokens additionally, so you'll get like 1 goblin, like Siege Gang Commander is a good example. Enters the battlefield, and then you get 3 more goblins. So you get 2 Siege Gang Commanders who then enter the battlefield, create 6 tokens. You'll have to sack one of the Siege Gang Commanders at the end of the turn because of Molten Echoes, but you'll still have like 6 of the goblin tokens.
It's basically a nerfed Splinter Twin, because Splinter Twin is a pretty good... it was banned, I think, for... It might still be banned, I have to check.
It's still banned in Modern.
Yeah, it's still banned in Modern. So this is basically a nerfed version, because you have to choose a specific creature type, and it's specifically a non-token creature. So, it's... Because of that, like, it's not as powerful. It's okay in tribal decks, as you talked about, Guy. Guy, are you going to... you and I both know the answer, but I want you to explain to the I want you to explain to the audience. Are you going to run this in, say, your Perforos deck?
If in my Perforos deck, no. But in a Perforos deck that is goblin heavily tribal, yes, you should definitely run this card. But for me personally, I think that it not being a goblin heavy deck and only like a third of my creatures being goblins, the payoff isn't worth it. I do think this is like somewhat a better Flame Shadow Conjuring, since you don't have to pay the mana into it. You are restricted to a creature type though,
Yeah,
so
that's the downside.
that is the downside, but
In the decks that want it, it's good.
yes. And there's probably quite a few decks, like just any tribal deck that runs red.
Yeah. Guy, I know you and I have been going back and forth reading cards, but I feel like you should read this next one.
Ah, yes, this is also one that I'm very excited for. Fireflux Squad. 3 in a red, creature, human soldier, 4/3 with haste. Whenever Fireflux Squad enters, attacks, so not even when you deal damage. You may exile another target creature you control. So if you do, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card. Put that card onto the battlefield tapped and attacking, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This is probably my new favorite card of the 99, just for like the personal reasons. Because as long as it gets in an attack, it's pretty good for Perforos. Other cards, because I think what's really important to note is you may exile another target creature. It's not going to restrict you to the non-token creatures, so you can just sack one of your tokens. Like, who cares about them? And then you can just like flip a bunch of stuff, and then like if you're running like, you know, good creatures with ETB effects or, you know, static abilities, which you should be, you'll just flip into something that's like going to be relevant all the time. And I mean, you could also, Rakdos, Lord of Riots. This would be a good card because you're probably going to just flip into an Eldrazi. Yeah, this seems like a decent card, and I also think one that people are going to sleep on.
Yeah, I think this is great if like you're playing in a battle cruiser meta, where you're just playing like big giant creatures, and like I can definitely imagine at the end of the night, someone's like, oh yeah, I was winning, but then like they attacked me with the Fireflux Squad, and they flipped over, and they just got like the Emrakul, not the one that's banned, the other Emrakul, and I just died to like this giant spaghetti monster. And like, I can just see people talking about that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, so now we're going to move into the last color, green.
Woo! All right, we have some good ones here. We are going to start off with Curious Herd. It is 3 and a green for an instant. Choose a target opponent. You create X 3/3 green beast creature tokens, where X is the number of artifacts that player controls.
Oh, okay, wait. I totally read this card wrong, because at first I thought it was like Dockside Extortionist, where it's like, Dockside Extortionist enters the battlefield, you like count up the number of artifacts and enchantments among all players, or all opponents, sorry. And so I was like, oh yeah, like, you know, you'll probably get at least like 9 beast tokens. So, okay, this card isn't nearly as good as I thought it was going to be. It's strictly because you have to choose a target opponent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like,
man, dumb.
Okay,
all
just
right,
think
whatever.
of Dockside.
Wasn't even drunk when I wrote the notes.
Just like think of Dockside Extortionist, where like you get treasure, which is good. This makes 3/3 beasts, which is worse. And like it's not even all opponents; it's just one opponent. Yeah, it's just. But this is a really good example, right? Of like you really need to read what a card does. People don't read cards, man. Especially like when you're playing EDH. Like EDH is complicated. People don't read cards, so like they really trust your opponent to be transparent about what the card does. And so you really need to know what your cards do, people. So, all right. Then we have a card that excites me. It is Glade Muse, or Glade Moose, or I don't know.
Glade Muse.
Glade Muse. I like to think, yeah. When I first read it, I was like, Glade Moose. It's cool because it looks like a moose, but no. Seedboard Muse. It's Glade Muse. Anyway, it is 2 and a green for a beast 2/4. Whenever a player casts a spell, if it's not their turn, that player draws a card. So,
creating cantrips for everyone?
Kinda.
Okay, I mean, kind of. It's definitely like one of those bends in the color pie that we see so very often given to green. Just because like a lot of green's card draw tends to be associated with creatures' power and toughness. Mark Rosewater talked about how they just kind of created this card to like fill a space that they needed for one of the new cards in the deck. And they're like, it kind of makes sense, but it's like, it's rough. And they had a debate about it, and it ended up becoming this card. I don't think this is going to backfire like how it did for Beast Within.
Yeah, Beast Within was, rough.
Yeah, but I'll be interested to see if like this does as much damage or if any. It's just kind of funny because people are immediately like, why is this a green card? And they're like, we don't know.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah, he said, quote, yes, obviously in a vacuum the effect is more blue, but it is green enough to be an acceptable bend. The set needed a green card for this deck. If the answer was no, the card doesn't change colors. It gets pulled from the set and replaced. So really, like, for non-rotating formats, this will be forgotten. But it's like in the world of EDH, we forgive nothing. So it's like...
Well, in Standard, it's not like you could even play this card.
Yeah, true.
Or Modern. Like, the only cards that... Or the only time this is going to see play is Commander, because I think Legacy and Vintage are the only other 2 formats that can utilize cards from Commander products.
I believe so. That is true. But anyway, I think people were being a bit harsh. Like, you know, like a bend is acceptable. Like as long as it's not like all the time, which I just. Yes, it is more blue. It's kind of like Wavebreak Hippocamp, which we just got in Theros Beyond Death. It sort of rewards someone for being a control player. It's not quite Heartwood Storyteller, which is one of my pet favorite green cards. Since Storyteller usually punishes control decks. It's not. I don't think that's a very good comparison. I think it's much better comparison to compare it to Wavebreak Hippocamp. But yeah, speaking of bending the color pie, I'm gonna eat my own words. We have
Which, again, we just give to green for some reason.
we have Ravenous Gigantotherium. It is 7 green creature beast 3/3. Wait a minute, a 9 mana spell that's a 3/3. But wait, it has Devour 3. So yeah. So
as it enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice any number of creatures. This creature enters the battlefield with 3 times that many +1/+1 counters on it.
Yeah, so it could potentially be a 12/12 at most. And as it enters the battlefield, it deals X damage divided as you choose among any X target creatures, where X is its power. Each of those creatures deals damage to its power to Ravenous Gigantotherium.
It's not going to become a 12/12 at most. It's going to, however many tokens, like let's say you have 10 tokens for some reason, you could stack all 10 of those tokens and then get 30 counters to put on this creature, and then it becomes a 33/33. Yeah, it's a little more.
Yeah, it's any number of creatures. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
I'm totally wrong. Thank you for correcting me. I need to read cards.
Because, like, I don't know. I see why, like, some people were like, why is this a green card? But this one makes a little more sense to me, personally. Just because, like, green's board wipes, it's card draw. Like, those are always tied to creatures, because that's what green cares about the most. And so, yeah, it makes sense that, like, this could enter the battlefield, do a bunch of damage, kill a bunch of creatures. Like, yeah, that's kind of what... It's not like green's gonna get a damnation or anything. I think 9 mana, though, is a little excessive.
I think you...
Because it's not even like it's gonna, like, protect itself. Like, it's very possible that it's just gonna die at the end of this.
Yeah, there's a chance. It's fine. It's not necessarily a powerful card. It's just very interesting to talk about from a design perspective. So now we're moving into colorless, and so after this we're going to talk about our thoughts as a whole, but we're in the home stretch here.
Yeah, and we're going from monocolor to colorless because there were no multicolor cards that were worth giving a shit about.
Basically, yeah.
All right. So first one is Sanctuary Blade, which is 2 a artifact equipment. As Sanctuary Blade becomes attached to a creature, choose a color. Equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has protection from the last chosen color. Equip 3. Yeah, so this is like a poor man's, like, sort of whatever. You can repick whatever color you want when you re-equip it, which I think is very good to note. So situational, good early drop. I think this is pretty decent. Yeah, you just get to pick what's probably going to be the biggest threat to you at the moment and protect a creature. You're not bound to whatever color as it enters the battlefield.
Yeah, I honestly think this card's shitty. But, like, from a design perspective, this is really interesting because of protection. The only other equipment that has protection is what you mentioned earlier, the Sword of Cycle. And I know for a fact that Wizards of the Coast has moved away from protection just because it didn't do things that they liked. But especially over the last, I'd say, year or so, they are slowly starting to, like, include cards that have protection again, and that's, like, interesting to me that they were willing to kind of, like, dip their toes in the water again.
Yeah, and I mean, the swords tend to be expensive.
Yes.
I don't think this card's going to be expensive, so it's kind of like a somewhat on a budget auto-included for, like, Voltron deck.
I don't know
Budget.
Like, heavy budget, guys. Yeah. Alright, so then we're going to talk about Manascape Refractor. It is 3 mana for an artifact. It enters the battlefield tapped, and it has all activated abilities of all lands on the battlefield. You may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to pay the activation costs of Manascape Refractor's abilities.
This is interesting. I think people's initial reaction were like, this is so abusable. Because you can just copy, like, your opponent's Cabal Coffers, Gaia's Cradle, whatever you want, and, like, you know, yeah, I guess, but those lands go into decks that are running them for a reason. If you're not running black and have a bunch of swamps and care about that, then it's like, I guess this isn't going to be that relevant to me.
Exactly. Like, unless you're running swamps, like, your Cabal Coffers is useless.
Okay, wait, hold on. I take that back, because if the person who is running Cabal Coffers is probably also got Urborg out at the same time, so you will also have a bunch of swamps.
Sometimes.
I would argue probably most of the times. But Gaia's Cradle is probably a better example, where, you know, the one who's playing Gaia's Cradle probably has a lot of creatures, and is going to be able to tap their Gaia's Cradle for, like, 20 mana. You might be able to tap it for 4. So, that's good-ish, I guess, but, like, it's not going to... The one who's getting 20 mana from their Gaia's Cradle is probably doing a lot better than you.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, I think this is a really cool design, but I think people are overhyping this way too much. Like, this kind of reminds me of Nyx Lotus, how people were like, oh my... Like, because both enter tapped, and they're both, like, mana rocks that do some kind of weird, cool effect. And, like, people played with Nyx Lotus and realized, oh... it sucks. And then I feel like people will play this because you're just like, oh my gosh, it has activated abilities of all lands on the battlefield. That must mean, like, you can break it somehow, right? And no, you, like, actually can't. Like, because it's... Okay, let's just play it out. You play it on 3, it enters the battlefield tapped. On 4, you play a land, and you probably want to cast, like, a 5-drop, so you tap out. And then your opponent plays... Gaia's Cradle, taps it to make a bunch of mana, and probably wins. Like, you probably weren't smart enough to hold it up untapped, because you probably wanted... I just don't think... It's not going to get there. It's going to be... It's fun to talk about. I don't think people will ever actually play it. And then, especially if you have, like, a bounce land... Correct me if I'm wrong, but if you have, like, those bounce lands, you're always bouncing this back to hand.
No, bounce lands... say when it enters the battlefield,
ability.
This is activated abilities.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're right. But still, it's not that good.
Well, no, it's an enter the battlefield ability.
Yeah.
So, no. That is incorrect. Don't worry about that.
But it's still shit. It's still shit.
It's still shit. I mean, you could at least... Yeah, at the very least, bare minimum, you could tap it for 1 color mana, because it has activation abilities, which all lands have, like, at least 1. So
I'd rather just run... If you are running 3 CMC rocks, I'd rather run, like, all the other ones before this.
Yeah.
Almost all of them.
And, okay, so the last new card we're going to talk about, and I'm not going to waste that much time talking about this myself, because I don't even know why we wanted to talk about this. Nesting Grounds, which is a land, taps for a colorless mana, snooze. And then 1 mana tap will move a counter from target permanent you control onto another target permanent. Activate this ability only anytime you can cast a sorcery. Yeah, I don't think this is that good. Why are we talking about this?
Okay, so it's painfully mediocre.
I know I brought up the Curious Herd, and that was my bad. And I only realized it in the moment, but I feel like there's no other good reason to talk about this card. So,
Let me explain to you.
Oh god.
Okay, so yeah, it's pretty mediocre even in a Planeswalker deck, right?
Sure.
Alright, so here's what you do. You have a Planeswalker, and then you use this to move a loyalty ability over to Pakao or Mowu and give them a loyalty counter so that they are a loyal, good doggo.
Okay, that's a better reason than I thought you were gonna explain some dumb combo that took like 10 steps and then it didn't really win you the game. But yep. I guess that's better.
That's the best thing you can do with this land. Moving on.
I mean, in that regard, if you are gonna keep this around, you could move a counter from target on another target permanent.
There's no use.
Well, hold on. You could move the loyalty counters over to Nesting Grounds because it's a permanent.
Okay.
And then, like, you could move loyalty counters. You can, like, get a bunch of them loyalty counters stacked onto Nesting Grounds. And then, you know, when your Planeswalker enters the battlefield, you can, like, give it 1 extra.
Yeah, that's my point. But that's mediocre.
But you would do that on Nesting Grounds. You wouldn't do that on, like, Mowu, because Mowu's vulnerable. It's a creature.
Guy, don't you think you understand the concept of a joke?
Oh, my God. Alright, so wrapping up. Who do we think the best new commander is? And best is subjective.
So we should
course.
clarify. What do we mean by best? Do we mean like out of the box?
When I say best, I guess I meant which commander has the most potential. So that's how I'm going to phrase this and then answer my own question. Because I was thinking Calamax, just because he's probably the strongest, because he's not bounded by some linear mechanic. He's got instants, and instants are just a major part of the game. And there's always going to be good instants printed in every single set for the rest of our lives. Yeah, I don't... It's just good, and it's good value. I don't know, it's not going to be like... We'll see if it becomes CDH viable.
Yeah.
But out of the box, like, best new commander, like, they all seem pretty balanced. If you wanted to, like, brew from scratch, most potential would be Calamax or Kazor and Yukima, the man and whale wolf pair. So those two.
Yep. I think this is for once where we're like pretty much in complete agreement, where out of the box, all of them are very balanced. If you take one of them and tune them up as much as possible, I think Calamax is probably the best. Maybe Gavi, but that's a big if. And then, yeah, what you said, where Yukima food chain, I think is probably like the best you're gonna get.
Yeah, I think Gavi would probably come in a close third. The only thing that, I mean, I think when we did see 2019, I did say Onion Falconrath was probably the best one, just because I felt like you could abuse her ability to discard a Madness card, to draw a card, and
she was. Like, she was very popular. Lots of people built her.
Yeah, and I guess the one thing about Gavi is you are limited to once per turn, where Anya was just like, get her out, go, go, go. And it was almost like a turn to, like, start, like, just draw your whole deck kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, yeah, you could build Gavi in a very similar fashion. It's just, I don't think it's going to be nearly as fast as Anya.
Yeah, I'd agree. What do we think of the best 99?
Oh, I mean...
Oh!
This is one that is, like, not tough at all. No. Like, obviously, the cycle of cast your cards for free if you control a commander... Like, almost, even, like, the green one, I know that you say, like, it's not even that good. I still feel like that's still somewhat better than most of the other cards that we talked about.
Unless it's constant mists. Fogs suck.
Alright. But yeah, the two best ones are Deadly Trick and Fierce Guardianship.
Yeah.
Exiling target creature or countering non-target creature spell. Like, cast that for free? Yeah, hell yeah. They'll just slot into, like, any deck. Whereas, like, the red one's a little more situational, but it can be very good. Again, green is situational, and then, like, I mean, white will go hard with its, like, small...
Yeah, any mono-white commander that's not Avacyn wants the white one, right?
Pretty much, so...
Maybe.
Yeah, they're good. The Deadly Trick and Fierce Guardianship.
Yeah.
Good for sure.
Yeah, like... Because just to add to that, like... Fierce Guardianship, like almost any commander deck running a counterspell package now runs this. Any mono black deck, especially, will be running Deadly Trick. Like, I've definitely been guilty of talking about white single spot removal creature kill spells when I definitely should not have. But this, on the other hand, fuck, like, this just slaps. It's any creature, it's exile, it can be for free most of the time, it can be splashed, all of these can be splashed in multicolored decks just because they're so efficient. Like, fuck. It's way better than the C18 Commander Storm garbage we got.
Yeah, hard agree. Alright, so just some general thoughts from Commander 2019 to Commander 20, just because it's kind of more recent, still a little fresh in our heads, but I feel like this is a step up, and I want to say that mainly because these secondary commanders that we got in Commander 2019 just felt so open-ended and not relevant to the decks. So it's like, I didn't really care about those, whereas these coming out, it's like a little better that I can run the partners, and only the partners, because the other legendary creature that was in the color identity in these decks for Commander 2020 are still falling into the same boat of, you know, they have the same color identity, but they're not relevant to the deck strategy. But the partners at least kind of synergize with what these decks want to do out of the box.
It really just is giving you more options.
Right. And I think that's very nice because, you know, you could have a couple games with your friends if you want to all buy the precons. And you don't have to play the same deck, same commander every game to kind of like make the deck work. You just literally can now, you know, put in 2 commanders, and like that's really fun to do. The one thing that I will argue till the end of time with you on this, Blake, is that I still believe that WotC could afford to print a Shockland or 2 into these decks, just because like mana bases are like the core crux of all these decks. And I do know that, like, you know, they aren't the best, and that's, you know, where you probably want to first start your improvements. But if these are meant to be like starter decks for people, I feel like you should at least throw them a bone and give them 1 Shockland. You did it in the Brawl decks. Why can't you just do that for this? It's a little frustrating.
Yeah.
But I see where you're coming from. Like, they're just valuable. But come on. I mean, Locust God costs more than all the not all the fetches. All the Shocklands at the moment.
That is
but
true.
We got him reprinted.
That is true.
So
yeah. Yeah, if it's a Shockland, yeah, like maybe do 1 Shockland, throw us a bone. If it's a fetch land, I feel like that's a bit more difficult because those are so much pricier. But I would kind of agree with you on that, guy, yeah.
And I know that their fear of doing that is, they're like, oh, well, the people who just want the fetch lands are just gonna like buy out all the decks, and it's gonna take away from the people who just want to buy a deck to like get into Commander. Well, you know what the solution is? You just print more of them, and then we have more fetches. And like, what's the problem with that?
Not
this is solving. You're making money, and it makes me mad. And I don't know. I mean, I'm not mad about the whole Secret Lair fetch lands thing, because I think people were bitching a little too hard about that. Hot take, whatever. But like here, I definitely think it's worth bitching about, just because like.
Well, now we'll see, guy. We're one step at a time. Like, we've gotten some better reprints. Now we get to bitch about something else, and it's gonna be reprinting fetch lands.
Yes, and that is good to say, because like, you know, if maybe in like Commander 20,
one problem gets solved, another one is made. That's how a lot of life is.
Right. Like, we're never gonna have all the things that we want in these Commander decks. Like, so yeah, maybe in Commander 2021 they'll be like, all right, we've heard you. We're gonna make the mana bases actually good, and we're gonna be like, thank fucking God. Now, could you fix X, Y, and Z about the product? And they're gonna be like, Jesus Christ,
it's
like,
never gonna end. I will say, for me, I love the product, and I guess the one, not necessarily a problem I have, just concern, is that mutate is a difficult mechanic to understand, especially for both veteran players and new players, because believe it or not, Commander Precons are half the purpose of Commander Precons is to get new players into Commander. So if veterans have a hard time figuring it out, I'm a little bit concerned about brand new players. And
that is a very good point that I had not thought of, but I would think that then probably the people who are going to be building the mutate deck or buying the mutate deck are probably going to be on the veteran players side. So
to counter
it's interesting.
To counter myself, like in this specific situation, like at least in certain regions of the world, like it will be on MTG like Arena, and so doing online does help people from making mistakes and see how it works, but that's very much a small band-aid to the gaping wound that is this difficult mechanic.
Yeah. I'll be interested to see if that does become a common complaint out of this.
And we will talk more about our thoughts on mutate and cycling and the rest of Ikoria in our Ikoria set. So,
and probably future episodes in the next coming months too, because
there's a lot
I feel
to
like
talk about.
There's quite a lot to talk about. Like, this is very good that they kind of took this opportunity to make the decks with a set, because there's just so many things that we can like go into.
Yeah. If you are sitting there thinking you didn't talk about X, Y, or Z card, it's because it's either in Ikoria and you're just confused, or it wasn't important enough that we felt warranted your time to talking about. So,
right. We're trying to give general overviews of what we think the best cards are in a variety of decks, not just like the cycling one, not just like the mutate one. We're trying to, like, you know, if you're just listening to us to say, all right, are there any noteworthy cards that I could just throw into Perforos or Sigarda? Okay, nothing for me. Moving on.
Yeah.
And with that, we're just going to say we're going to move on and finish up. So thank you very much for listening. We hope you had a great time. You can find us on Twitter at thewizardstaff101. You can send us an email at thewizardstaff@gmail.com. Sorry, thewizardstaff101@gmail.com. You can send us a Facebook message. You can follow us on Instagram. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, or anywhere else that you listen to your podcasts.
Basically everywhere.
And with that, we say good night, thank you, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
Peace.
Peace.